The views and opinions of this broadcast do not reflect the views and opinions of Armed Media, New Productions and its affiliates. Enjoy the show.
Teflon Pan Man. I'm the Teflon Pan Man. Ain't nothing gonna stick on me.
Hello, everyone. Good evening. Robert Rosenthal here, your host on the All You Can Eat podcast. This is episode number 29. 29 episodes here, All You Can Eat. It's the podcast about deliciousness. You know, that kind of thing. Wednesday nights, 8 o'clock Eastern, I'm here, coming to you live from New York City, New York, where it was anyway, a spectacular day. One of those kind of early fall days where the weather is still, you know, you could go out in shorts. It's nice. Must have been like, I don't know, 75 degrees out there. It was sunny. Fantastical day. And something happens, though, as you transition into fall, which is that the menu changes, so to speak. The tomatoes and corn that were just peaking a few weeks ago or a month ago are becoming more like squash and more root vegetables. You see more cauliflower and broccoli and that kind of thing. Chefs love the fall. I mean, then again, chefs love every season. Who's kidding who? I mean, there's nothing wrong with summer cooking. It's fantastic. We talked about that a lot over the last 12, 13 weeks. But the fall is interesting, though. I mean, you start to make dishes that are a little bit more casserole-y. You start using more braising as a technique, long and slow cooking to make stews and to make soups. And so for this evening, ladies and gentlemen, people of deliciousness, in spite of my having zero appetite, which I confess is so rare for me, always thinking of my next meal, and yet at this point, I don't know, I must have had so much for so long that my body could literally use like a break. I was going to say fast, but let's get serious. I mean, anyway, the point is that in spite of my lack of appetite at the very moment, I have scoured the interwebs in preparation for tonight's podcast to see what's cooking this time of year. And I actually had a conversation with someone earlier in the day, and I said, hey, what should I discuss this evening on the podcast, episode number 29. I know that I mentioned that, but it is the third day of October that I'm coming to you live. And he said to me, talk about gourds. And of course I just burst out laughing because really? Where did gourds come from? And yet, I totally understand where it came from. You know where it came from? It came from that's what you're seeing now. As we head into October and Halloween, you're seeing gourds. And then he said, I guess you could talk about what you would do with them. And I said, what do you mean what you would do with them? Like, he's like, how you would cook them. And I'm like, you don't cook gourds, do you? And he said, well, I don't know, don't you? I said, I don't know. I think gourds are basically just these ugly little curvy kind of things that grow out of the ground with like a disease on their skin of bumps. It looks like other than the fact that they're pretty color, they're weird to me. And he said, no, I think you can cook gourds because doesn't it include, squash and pumpkin and that kind of thing? And so I had to look it up. And so the answer is, can gourds be eaten? And what's the difference between gourds and squash? And they all come from squash and gourds and pumpkins, all are members of the same very enormous plant family, which is difficult to pronounce, but it's basically like Cucurbitaceae. I wonder how you would pronounce it. Cucurbitaceae. Cucurbitaceae family. Zucchini, patty pan squash, acorn squash, spaghetti squash, butternut squash, and pumpkins, and like 700 other species are all in that kind of genetic umbrella. And then the question is, well, fine, can gourds be eaten? And the answer is that when you see the word gourd, Gourd, and I'm laughing because it sounds like the kind of thing, it's not an appetizing sounding thing. I remember once writing, I should probably go back to it, a whole article about how certain foods just sound disgusting even before you eat them. Hey, what are you having for dinner tonight? We're just going to have gourds. I don't know. It doesn't sound good. But the point of the story is only this, that gourds are really intended to be used as a decoration, whereas if you want to cook something, you're going to end up buying a squash. Any kind of squash. And if it's really big and round and orange, it's usually a pumpkin. So that answers the question about, do you eat gourds? And I'm bringing up the gourd thing because this is the season. 'Tis the season to eat your squash. So much so that when I tuned into the places that I would normally go to look for kind of recipe inspiration, one of the things that showed up on Food and Wine was our 18 favorite acorn squash recipes. Acorns are the little kind of cute ones, obviously, that are shaped like an acorn. Versus the butternut. Those are bigger. I'm not positive, by the way. I mean, I mostly make the butternut, but, sure, acorn squash, that sounds good. They're prettier. I don't know, maybe they're not, whatever. And I'm sure it's the same, by the way. The way that you're going to make them, one way or the other, whether it's acorn or butternut there's a whole lot of lovely squash out there. I think squash is underrated. Like, I swear, I don't remember growing up and eating a lot of squash, like ever. But here's 18 acorn squash recipes, and let's go through it together. We're going to kind of do this spontaneously. This is to take a peek at what looks interesting to us on these 18 favorite acorn squash recipes from Food and Wine. They've been collecting recipes for 40 years, so let's assume they got 18 decent ones. But let's not, spend a lot of time on each and every one. Let's just see what kind of looks interesting. Healthy chicken and roasted acorn squash. Perfect as a holiday side or paired with a nice green salad. Quick and healthy weeknight meal. This cold weather twist on traditional chicken salad is sure to satisfy. Now, I'm sure it's good. Not exciting enough. Here you go. Baked acorn squash with chestnuts, apples, and leeks. Now, that is a full recipe if ever there was one. The picture is beautiful because those little acorn squash are just they're just adorable with their dark outside once they've been roasted with that orange soft interior, and then you can see that it's stuffed with these chestnuts, which are wonderful. Apples, I think leeks, underutilized vegetable. I've spoken about leeks many times before. Beautiful tasting from the onion, family, but they get like super mellow and sweet when you braise them. The hardest part of cooking a leek, by the way, since you're essentially just cooking it in kind of simmering liquid, is cleaning the leek. That you got to spend a minute or two doing. But, the leeks, I think, here's the point I'm going to make. When it comes to squash, what's difficult with squash is kind of cutting it and scooping it and all that kind of stuff. I don't mean difficult. That's where the work is. But you can't help but notice every supermarket in the world that you go into these days has already done the work. They've literally cut it out. Whatever kind of squash you want, they've cut it, they've diced it, they've cubed it, And so they make it really easy. Baked acorn squash with chestnuts, apples, and leeks. All right, halved acorn squash make perfect single-serving bowls. These are a great vegetarian main course for a winter holiday, but also a festive accompaniment to turkey, ham, or roast goose. Let's take a peek at the recipe, shall we, boys and girls? Baked acorn squash. Not great ratings. Not terrific ratings, but let's see. Oh boy. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm sorry to report that there are maybe too many ingredients. You know, I have a thing about recipes. I see 6, 7 ingredients, I'm feeling pretty good. I see 3 steps, I'm good. I start seeing 14, 15, 16 ingredients, and a 3-star rating. Let's move on to another recipe here, if we could, because that one is not working for me. I mean, by the way, if it is for you, if you go, oh man, that sounded so exciting, chestnuts, apples, and leeks with bacon as well, just go to foodandwine.com and look up acorn squash. All right, let's see what else they have here. Then you have winter acorn squash, turkey, and mushroom soup. That looks nice. Mustard stewed acorn squash with chicken. Chicken, mustard, and other spices. All right, let's see what else we got here. That sounds good, though. It does sound good. Mustard stewed acorn squash. Let's see what comes next. Here is, this one looks good, too. Stewed acorn squash with mushrooms and Chinese sausage. Now, why does that excite me? Because Chinese sausage is great. Let's see what the recipe looks like. Here we go. All right, now, the recipe is not available. Okay, I'm sorry about that. What happens? Classic brown sugar roasted acorn squash. Perfectly sweet, easy to make. Classic acorn squash recipe is great for holiday meal any time of year. Of course, everything is great for any time of year. So let's go to the recipe here and see if this works. Yeah. Classic brown sugar roasted acorn squash. Ingredients. This we like, and I'll tell you why. 1 medium acorn squash. That's about 2 pounds. It's cut in half. That's it. You've halved it, and you've taken out the seeds. You're going to need 1/4 cup of unsalted butter, melted. 1 tablespoon of brown sugar. Folks, other than salt and pepper, hard to argue with this one. That's what you got. Preheat oven 400, line a baking sheet with parchment paper. That's so when the squash cooks, it doesn't make it just a giant mess, especially with the brown sugar. That stuff sticks. Step 2, combine the melted butter and the brown sugar. So now you have sweet butter. Coat the acorn squash halves with the brown sugar mixture, season with salt and pepper. Step 3, your final step. Place the acorn squash halves cut side down on the prepared pan. Roast for 30 minutes. Flip the squash over, brush with juices from the pan. Continue roasting for 20 minutes more, and you know that that's going to be good. Just is. Let's see what else they got in here. Cinnamon spice roasted acorn squash. Yeah, you don't need to look to that recipe. You just go to that last one we just talked about and add cinnamon to it. Brown sugar and cinnamon on squash. You know. Let's see what else they got in here. These are great. Some of these are really great. Let's see. Stewed Chinese mushroom. Okay, that one we couldn't get. That recipe was not available. But let's see. This one looks interesting too. Sage brown butter. Okay, fine. So instead of using the cinnamon, you can use sage that you combine with the butter. That looks good. This one looks really good. Maple bacon roasted acorn squash. Okay, let's see. Make this acorn squash a meal with sweet maple syrup and flavored with crisp bacon. It's hard not to eat the whole thing by yourself. Well, nobody can argue with that. Let's take a look at how they make that. This is exciting. Come with me. Maple bacon roasted acorn squash. Here we go. Ingredients. Okay, perfect. Perfect. 3 steps, 4 ingredients, and that 4th one is salt. It was beautiful. So here's what you need to make this. You're going to need your acorn squash, 1 medium one. That's about 2 pounds right there. But I'm telling you, you're going to want to make more than just one of them. Anyway, it serves 4 people because they're saying you're going to take your 2-pound acorn squash, you're going to cut it into quarters and take the seeds out. You need 3 slices of bacon, and those are going to be cut into 1-inch pieces. So you're going to cut them, which I always do, by the way, when I make bacon. I cut it first, rather than cooking up the whole strip. So here, folks, 3 slices of bacon cut into 1-inch pieces. Your acorn squash, which is a medium one, or whatever size you want, a couple of pounds, cut into quarters and seeded. 2 tablespoons of maple syrup, and then some salt. Kosher or sea salt to taste. Oven 400, baking pan, and parchment paper. Got it. Step 2. In a skillet, cook bacon pieces till lightly crisp. Remove them from the skillet. Drain on the paper towel. Set aside. 3. Take skillet off the heat. Stir the maple syrup and salt. This is important now. Watch this. Into the bacon juices. Now, it's funny that they would use the word bacon juices. It's bacon fat, okay? It's the rendered fat from the bacon. You're hard-pressed to call it juice. Anyway, you take the skillet off the heat, stir the maple syrup and the salt into the bacon pieces. Cut the squash pieces with the maple syrup. Coat the acorn squash pieces with the maple syrup mixture. Place the acorn squash on the prepared pan and roast for 30 minutes. Then turn it over. Brush it with the juices from the pan and mix the bacon pieces with the acorn squash. Continue roasting for 10 minutes or until tender. Beautiful combination of food. Nobody's ever going to argue with bacon. The fact that you've added in the sweetness is from the maple syrup, or frankly, you could do this one too with the brown sugar. Lovely. Bacon. That's just fantastic. Right, okay, what else you got on this? Bacon with garlic, butter, and burrata. Wow. Very indulgent vegetarian dish. Roasted sweet squash, topped with just melted burrata. Fantastic, with a lush Chardonnay. Let's see about this, because I tell you, I'm starting now, and I know that I've been through a bunch of these, but I'm already starting to think about roasting squash. It's easy. I mean, the hard part literally is cutting the thing. Then you're going to scoop out seeds, and you're throwing it into the oven on a pan that's lined with some parchment. That'll just help you in the cleanup. Let's see what this one is like. Here's a go-to recipe: acorn squash with garlic, butter, and burrata. Oh, sounds lovely. How many ingredients? Whoa. Oh, hey. Easy. Butter, shallot, garlic, thyme leaves, pepper, squash, oil, balsamic, baby greens, red onion, burrata. Okay, it's only 2 steps, but it's a lot of ingredients. I'm not making it. Sorry, you want to see that one again, my friends? Food and Wine. Look up acorns. It's called, the article is called Our 18 Favorite Acorn Squash Recipes. Let's see if there's anything else in here. Black-eyed pea, curry, blah, blah, blah. Let's see if there's anything else that's worth our checking out. Ginger roasted, don't really care. Acorn squash and escarole salad, nope, not for me either. Garlic, butter, and burrata. Okay, I think that we've exhausted the conversation on what to do with squash. Just to repeat, it's not a gourd. Gourds are going to decorate your table. Squash you're going to put in the oven and roast, apparently at 400 degrees, somewhere between 40 minutes and 60 minutes, depending on the size of the squash and the heat of your oven. And you will roast those with anything from butter and brown sugar to maple syrup and bacon and that kind of thing, sage, all that. Lovely. Let's see what else is happening. I'm going to turn that off. There was something that I saw today, and I wanted... Oh, the joy. Right, here it is. Yeah, the joy of cooking. I'm going to go over to this now, because my perpetual lament is on the subject of the death of the home-cooked meal, since there are more people not making food these days than making it. And this is upsetting to me, because it just shouldn't be like that. It's not hard to make great food. You just have to kind of keep it simple. Most taste, fewest ingredients, least effort. My formula. Article in the New York Times. What is this? Is this today? Because it could very well be October the 2nd. Yes, today. Anita Lowe. So it's an article about the joy of cooking for one. Cooking for yourself can be even better, more delicious, practical, and creative than cooking for a crowd. Listen, the premise of this article is that there's some great advantage to cooking alone. I don't know. I just know that I have done it. I don't have any problem with it, but I cook in such quantity anyway that the idea of cooking like one meal, the only time I do it is like, if I'm making myself breakfast or lunch. But anything more complicated than that, generally I'm making a lot. I scanned through the article, and it seems that, what is Anita Lowe? Anita Lowe has written a book. Let's see what the name of her book is. She's great. She was a fantastic chef downtown New York. Had her own restaurant called Anissa. It was in the West Village. Ran that place for 17 years. She's a great cook, Anita Lowe. She's written a book about the pleasures of eating alone. They feature a particular recipe here with the premise that cooking in small quantities has its advantage. A small portion of cauliflower can be browned quickly in a pan to make cauliflower chaat. So now you're going, okay, wait a second. Cauliflower chaat, what is that? A touch of any of these ingredients change the direction. Ms. Lowe's recipe for pan-roasted cauliflower, which relies on a store-bought spice mix. I like that already. It's tangy with dried mango and black salt to effortlessly turn the vegetable into a quick South Asian-style chaat. Cauliflower is broken into florets. And again, cauliflower is one of those things that we'll be seeing a lot of coming out of the ground starting around now. And I'll tell you something, by the way. I didn't understand cauliflower. Growing up, I never why anybody would want to eat cauliflower, because it was essentially cardboard, and then if it was cooked, it became mushy. But neither the cardboard version, uncooked, or the cooked version had anything resembling taste. And then when I went to cooking school, I guess, was when I started understanding the idea of roasting vegetables and caramelizing them and bringing out their natural sweetness. And then all of a sudden cauliflower gets exciting, right, when you roast it. And what do you need to roast cauliflower rather than just cutting it up and throwing it on a baking sheet with some olive oil and salt? Nothing. Heat. And then people this is the ease of cooking. People go, well, I don't know, how do you cook it? Well, here's how you cook it. You cut it. You put olive oil on it, you put salt on it, you put it in an oven at 425 degrees, and then they go, well, I don't know, how long do I cook it? You put salt on it, right? And how long do I cook it? And the answer is, you look at it. And when that thing looks brown, you go, okay, we're getting somewhere. And my advice is, the more brown, the better. I'm not saying you should burn it. But the darker the cauliflower, the more intense that caramelization is, the more intense the flavor. What she does is she breaks it into the florets, browns it in a saucepan, which you can't do, obviously, when you're using a large quantity. So they're making the case here, cooking for one is a thing. Seasons it with a sauce of cilantro, yogurt, and green chilies. Cilantro, yogurt, and green chilies. So she's making an Indian sauce with it, and to make a garnish, she warms chopped almonds in the toaster oven. Toaster oven is a great tool to have in a small kitchen. Anything else here about cauliflower? Small quantities? No. That's the cauliflower story. Cooking for one. I don't care if you cook for one or you cook for 10,000. But cook. Easy. Delicious. Fun. What else is going on here? Thank you for bearing with me as we ride the internet together. 18 favorite squash recipes we've been through. And some of those are real good. Real good. Let's see what we should do next here. I'm going to skip, before we hit a couple more kind of recipes, I'm just going to skip around here because I caught this piece today about my friend Floyd Cardoz. Floyd Cardoz is just a genius Indian chef. Used to run a place for a lot of years called Tabla. I was blown away the first time I ate there, and the last, sadly. But anyway, he's still cooking over at the Bombay Bread Bar, and he's great. And the article is only this, that he, when he swears by a spice grinder. Now, for those of you who are not familiar, a spice grinder is basically a coffee bean grinder that you just happen to use for spices. And so you grind your own. And why do you grind your own? You grind your own because of the intensity of flavor that you get when you're grinding your own versus using spices and stuff that's already ground. Anyway, long way around this. You could use any coffee grinder to do that. He seems to be particular to Hamilton Beach custom grind coffee grinder. Customizable settings, control the level of coarseness you want, which is important in a spice blend. And then, it's also hands-free. Most of these you have to hold down the button. This one lets you just hit it and go. And then apparently it's easy to clean. So anyway, for those of you that are in the market for or contemplating in any way, either a coffee grinder or a spice grinder, because you want to grind up your own coriander and black pepper and fennel and mustard seeds and that's the thing, by the way. I let's not just skip over the fact that one of the easiest ways to make a difference in the food that you're cooking is obviously it's the way that you season it. And I'm not going to lie. I do not blend. Excuse me. I do not blend my own spice blend. It's not that I've never done it, but I'm not doing it because I'm busy making coffee, and I'm not buying a second thing. I'm sorry. I can get away with not doing it, but if I were cooking some Indian food, and of course this applies really to anything. If you're serious and you want to have some fun and you want to add some intensity of flavor, one of the ways to do that is by getting yourself a spice blender. There you go. I didn't mean to get all excited about it and then kind of confess that I don't use it myself. I don't know. I don't know. Now I got to get one. Spice Blender plays. Bon Appetit magazine. Here's what showed up for me in Bon Appetit magazine. Short ribs. And why short ribs? Because I feel like I don't know, I guess you see them, right? Braised short ribs, you see a lot, braised short ribs, but you also I see anyway, the Korean style short ribs. And the Korean style short ribs are fantastic. So here's a little story about Korean style short ribs and apparently, I wouldn't, the author is writing about how she had something or saw something that looked amazing and just assumed that it would be complicated to make. Not, it turns out. The recipe was not complicated. It was actually easy. She took a blender marinade, and this I will do and have done. And the blender was a marinade of chili pepper, lemongrass if you have, and you may not, but it's easy to come by, garlic, ginger, sesame oil, rice vinegar, brown sugar, and oil. Right? So, look, I'll be honest with you. I have all of these things in my house with the exception of lemongrass, and the author said the same thing, which is to say chili pepper, garlic and ginger, sesame oil, rice vinegar. So you talk about what you should keep in the pantry. Chili pepper, sure. Garlic stays for a long time. Ginger in my fridge. Sesame oil, important if you're making any kind of Asian. Rice vinegar, brown sugar, and oil, right? So she does a blender marinade of those and then marinates these short ribs in that marinade. And then they hit the grill. How long are you going to grill them? Like literally 3 or 4 minutes. And you end up with these kind of juicy, flavorful short ribs. she says, I wanted to eat by the stack like pancakes. So there you go, short ribs. I feel like next time I see them, I'm going to get them. And I'm going to go to my blender and I'm going to do up this marinade. And if I could find some lemongrass, great. And then marinate them a bit and hit them on the grill. Now again, it's going to have to be like an inside, so you could use a grill pan. But the point is, it cooks quickly. And they are fun to eat. Little like riblets. There's another story here about how broccoli is making a comeback. Broccoli is making a comeback. I don't know. I mean, let's see. Broccoli. George Bush, the original one, made a big deal about hating broccoli. I think people have a thing about broccoli. I don't mind broccoli. The way I do broccoli is you could roast it. In fact, I've been to restaurants that serve what they call burnt broccoli. Literally, they're roasting it to the point where it gets kind of like, burnt looking. It's good. Hit it up with some red pepper flakes. Make it a little, heat, a little exciting. Broccoli comeback. The thing that she was excited about on this broccoli was that it was roasted, and with a hot honey ricotta toast, meaning that it was ricotta cheese that's been spread on a toast with some honey and roasted broccoli. Now, I don't know if I'm looking at a picture of it. It looks glorious. Toasty bread, broccoli, and that nice spread, and the honey to make it sweet. It just sounds lovely to me. Let's see where this is. Roasted broccoli and garlic ricotta on toast. Sounds so good. Let's see what are they ever going to give us a recipe? I see. The answer is no. They're going to take you through it by yourself. You have to read an entire article to basically get to the point. And the answer is salty broccoli, mild and milky ricotta, zingy hot honey are better together, and there you put it on a beautiful piece of toast. I like that. That's just plain pretty. Let's see. That is just beautiful. All right, so if you're interested in the actual recipe, oh, here it is. Okay. Crispy roasted broccoli proves it works just as well as an appetizer as a side dish. Oh, I like that idea. Use broccoli stems in any recipe that calls for florets. Their crunch provides a nice textural contrast. Leave the peels on the garlic cloves so they steam and become creamy inside their skins when roasted. If you don't have ricotta, mix the mashed roasted garlic onto mayonnaise instead. So here's the deal. You need a baguette. Sliced in half-inch thick pieces on a diagonal. You'll have 12 pieces. You need 6 tablespoons of extra virgin olive oil. Fine. A head of broccoli. Stem is peeled. And then the florets, everything is chopped into like half-inch pieces. You need an entire head of garlic, and you've separated the cloves. We're going to roast this. Salt, a tablespoon of honey, a tablespoon of white wine vinegar, a half a tablespoon of crushed red pepper flakes, 1.5 cups of fresh ricotta. And again, here's the thing. If you find this interesting, don't worry about writing down everything that I've just said here. You can go find the recipe on Bone App, October of 2018. 400-degree oven, bread on a baking sheet. You drizzle with 2 tablespoons of that oil. You toss on the baking sheet to coat it. To coat it, you put it in a single platter. You put the broccoli and the garlic on another rim baking sheet and drizzle with the remaining oil, seasoned generously. So you're roasting, you're toasting the bread, you're roasting the broccoli, you are roasting the garlic, etc., etc. Whisk the honey, the vinegar, and the red pepper flakes, and when the garlic is cool, squeeze the cloves out of their skin. So the roasted garlic here is key, and there's a couple of ways. The other way you do this, just take the whole head of garlic, cut off a little bit of the top, not the root end, but the top end, hit it up with, this is how I would do it, right? You just take a whole head of garlic. It's going to be like 12 cloves, whatever it is. You cut off just the top part, like a half an inch of the top part, hit it up with some olive oil, put it in aluminum foil, put in some salt in there as well, close up the aluminum foil, put it in the oven at 400 for 20 minutes or so. It'll smell beautiful, and you take it out and make sure it's ready. It's ready when you can squeeze the roasted garlic right out of the head. And that stuff is fantastic. Garlic is cool enough to handle. Squeeze the cloves out of their skins and mash in a small bowl to form a paste. Add ricotta to the paste and mix well. Season with salt and black pepper. Spread the ricotta over the toast, top with roasted broccoli. Arrange on a platter and drizzle with the honey mixture. Hello. Damn. I like that. I like that plenty. Yeah, that's good. Ricotta, baguette, broccoli. Nobody can argue with that. What else is on here? You know, I came across it, and I think it's important because I hear about it all the time, and I never ever make it. It's totally easy to make. And what I'm talking about here is pasta al limone. It's a plate of pasta with lemon. Now, this is like my kid who loves lemon and loves pasta, and I've never made this for her, and I guess it's because I see that it's creamy, and I tend to, shy away. However, let's look at this recipe for pasta al limone. Ingredients: 1 lemon. We can do that. Let me take a sip of water. So beautiful. 12 ounces spaghetti or other long pasta, which is to say that it could be a linguine, or it could be, I suppose, even like an angel hair type of thing. Gonna need some salt, kosher salt. And the only other stuff you need to make this exciting is a combination of cream and butter and Parmesan cheese. Excuse me. 3/4 cup of heavy cream, 6 tablespoons of unsalted butter, and 3 ounces of finely grated Parmesan. This is why I don't make it, because it's way too... it looks fantastic and delicious, I suppose, but it's going to be caloric, and yet it's going to be great. Remove with a vegetable peeler 2-inch-long strips of lemon zest. Thinly slice each strip lengthwise into thin strands, set aside for serving. Finally grate the remaining zest into a large pot. Cut a lemon in half and squeeze out enough juice to get 2 tablespoons into a small bowl. Right? Cook pasta in another bowl of boiling, heavily salted water, stirring occasionally until it's al dente. Then you're going to finish cooking the pasta in the sauce. Add cream to the pot with the lemon zest and cook over a medium heat, whisking often until the liquid is just beginning to simmer. This is 2 minutes. Reduce the heat to a medium-low. Whisk in a tablespoon of butter at a time until melted and the sauce is creamy and emulsified. Remove that from heat. And just before the pasta is al dente, scoop out 1.5 cups of the pasta cooking liquid. Remember this. This stuff comes in handy. The water, the salted water, and the starch from the pasta that you've made. Add 3/4 cup of pasta cooking liquid to the cream sauce and return it to a medium heat. Using tongs, transfer spaghetti to the pot with the sauce. Cook, tossing it often, and then adding Parmesan little by little until the cheese is melted and the sauce is creamy, about 3 minutes. If the sauce looks tight, great. Tight meaning, let's see, it's kind of like heavy. It's it's versus loose, but I'm just saying that the sauce looks tight, meaning that it's too thick and it's clumpy and what you want to do. If the sauce looks tight, add 1 to 2 tablespoons of pasta cooking liquid. Cream sauces tighten up very quickly as they cool, so it's better to lean on the saucier side of things. Stir in the reserved lemon juice, season with more salt if needed, and then, divide it among bowls, hit it up with pepper, and then top with those reserved lemon zest strips that you have. You know that that's going to be good. You just know it. Speaking of vegetables for this type of year, I don't know if it's I don't know if people are sick of Brussels sprouts yet. I'm kind of not. 4 servings of this is roasted Brussels sprouts with a warm honey glaze. So, Brussels sprouts, cut them in half and throw them again on your on your baking sheet in the oven there with your oil and your salt, and you're good. The more color they get, the better. They get soft and they get sweet and they get delicious. I like it with bacon. I don't think it would hurt you to have a hit of red wine vinegar. That would make a nice dish. You could go this way, though, which is with a warm honey glaze. So you're going to bring a sweetness to this. And you're going to get some spice, which is coming from red pepper flakes. So you have a glaze and all this. What do you got? Brussels sprouts trimmed in half, yes. Quarter of a cup of olive oil, yes. Salt, no problem. Ground pepper, yes. Quarter of a cup of honey, a third of a cup of sherry vinegar or red wine vinegar, 3/4 of a teaspoon of crushed red pepper flakes. It's optional, but that'll give it the hit. 3 tablespoons of butter, 3 scallions, thinly sliced on a diagonal, and a teaspoon of finely grated lemon zest. All right, look, it's a lot of, well, it's more ingredients than I like, but that looks totally doable and good. Roasting, browning, stirring, and then basically creating your own kind of dressing with the combination of red wine vinegar and honey and butter, and then hit the thing up with lemon. And I'll tell you what, Brussels sprouts, warm honey glaze, accented with lemon here and scallions. I can make a meal of that. Don't suppose, by the way, that bacon would be bad in that either. Bars and restaurants, 8:43. Okay, I would say, let's see, what do we do here? I want to do one more thing. I'm going to do a chicken, I want to talk about this chicken dish, and then we're going to segue to some slightly different subject matter, including noise in restaurants and bourbon. I like to jump around. Or should we do bourbon? Yeah. Why don't we do? Let's do this in a different order. I want to come back to the garlic lover's chicken recipe, because I want to talk about Pappy Van Winkle. So this is for those people that know bourbon, like bourbon, love bourbon, need bourbon. Pappy Van Winkle is the one that's the hardest to get because they keep supply intensely limited, and they create not only an enormous demand but a high price point. But I bring you today your annual reminder to get on the waiting list at your favorite liquor store, because for bourbon fans, as it says, with a love of hard to find bottles and a bit of extra scratch, a lot of extra scratch, to spare, the annual race to get a bottle of whiskey from the old Rip Van Winkle distillery is official. Kind of. October 1 marks the date that the old Rip Van Winkle distillery, most famous for Pappy Van Winkle line of bourbons, told wholesalers across the country how many bottles of whiskey they could expect from the brand during this year's annual release. From there, individual distributors will determine how those bottles will reach the public, whether it's through a lottery, as some states choose to do, or by passing the bottles along to preferred retailers and drinking establishments who are deemed worthy of this extremely limited release booze. Sorry. What do they say here? We know all whiskey can be difficult to find, so our advice is to ask retailers in your area if they expect to receive stock, and if so, how they plan to sell it. Anyway, if you really want to get your hands on some Pappy, you better have some friends in the liquor store business, and you should have at least $270 for their limited edition 23-year-old. I don't know if I don't know. Yeah, if somebody else were paying, I'd sure want to know if it was worth $270, or if you could tell the difference between this and some other, outstanding bourbon. But anyway, Pappy Van Winkle, now's your time if you got friends and you got $270 for a bottle. And by the way, well, I'm sure it'll cost more. I've seen people pour it out of a bottle and charge stupid amounts of money for it. I don't know. Maybe part of that is brilliant marketing, I suppose. Not only the limit, well, it's the limit of the supply, but I don't know. Really work it. Speaking of Pappy Van Winkle, this is interesting from Fast Company magazine. And yet, it's this. Bars and restaurants are too damn loud. Can sound print cut through the noise? So, if you haven't noticed, it's true. Especially in a population, by the way, that is aging. And you see that more and more people are, I think, I saw some stat the other day on like a news show that the percentage of people over, I don't know, 70 that lose a significant amount of their hearing. It's like, it was more than half. I mean, it was kind of shockingly eye-opening. Anyway, it says here, like many singles, Gregory Scott was working way too hard to hear his dates. The city's abnormally loud bars and restaurants make connecting with a stranger all the more difficult, and in Scott's case, he had to work double time because he suffers from hearing loss. So a few years ago, Scott began Googling quiet spots and scrolling through review sites in search of tranquil establishments. He went so far as to measure the sound levels of venues and keep track of those that met his standards. And by the way, I would tell you this just as an aside. I have on my iPhone a decibel measurer, like an app, that tells you exactly how many decibels sound is wherever you are. Then he started sending the list, I mean the list of venues who keep track, the list of venues that were kind of, quiet. He started sending the list to his friends who shared the same frustration. Word of his project spread, and soon enough, more New Yorkers wanted in. I kept getting more and more requests for such lists, he tells Fast Company, so I created a crowdsourcing tool that we can all help each other find quieter venues while alerting us to the noisy ones. Then in April, Scott launched SoundPrint, a free app that serves as both a decibel reader, that's what I was talking about, and crowdsourced noise reviewer. It's meant to warn you before you venture into a place that's too loud, either due to music, crowds, or just poor acoustic design. Users can search for quieter restaurants and even filter by peak hours, at which point noise levels increase. It's been aptly nicknamed the Yelp for noise. The startup also features curated quiet lists in cities that hit a critical number of submissions. There are currently 8 live editions with about half dozen more slated by year's end. Basically, consider it the ultimate time saver for the next time you have an important meeting, family gathering, or a date with someone you'd prefer to hear. Though officially less than a year old, SoundPrint has already released a study of over 2,200 New York City restaurants and bars. The app measured selected venues for a minimum of 3 times during peak days and hours and found interesting results surrounding food trends and location. For example, Mexican, Latin, American, and Korean restaurants tend to be the loudest, while Indian, Chinese, and Japanese restaurants tend to be the quietest. Looking for the safest to hear neighborhood, SoundPrint found that as one proceeds from uptown to downtown New York, venues become increasingly louder, so that by the time you reach the Village or the Lower East Side, your ears may begin ringing, warned Scott. I am sorry. That water is good, but I think it's making me choke. On average, both restaurants and bars are too loud for conversation. It's not surprising for bars, considering people expect those places to be bustling. But for restaurants, which only 30 or 40 years ago were mainly places to not only enjoy good food, but also talk and hear your companion, that's quite a change. Noise is a nuisance, blah, blah, blah. Noisy place, it relaxes you, moving forward. All right, so anyway, long story short, there you go. A guy develops an app. The app is called SoundPrint. I'm pretty sure that you can find it on your app store, and then you can determine places that you can go that are not quite so loud. Interesting. I did pick up this, and by the way, speaking of restaurants, there's another thing about restaurants that I thought was interesting. It's an article in today's New York Post, Wednesday, of course, they do their food thing. And the article was interesting because it's some of New York City's best dishes aren't even on the menu. And we don't have to make this about New York. I'm pretty sure everywhere that you go, what you should know is that oftentimes there are There are secret eats, even in some of the big chain restaurants. Like I'm sure that, like even places like Fridays have, things that are kind of off menu. This one sounded very good though. Password protected. If you want this secret menu item at Flip CG's 2 locations, you have to be a little gutsy. It's called the F.U.C.Me wrap. Right? The FUC wrap, which stands for Filipino Underground Crunch Wrap. It's a dressed-up homage to Taco Bell's Crunchwrap Supreme with braised short rib, talked about that, kimchi fried rice, love, and Mexican cheese. The catch is that Andino won't let people order the toasty wrap unless they say its name out loud. And he doesn't mean with the initials. So people who are a little more kind of conservative might try to find a way around it, but will always be like, what was that? Can you say that again? Anyway. He wants you to say a bad word to get his Filipino Underground Crunch Wrap, the FUC wrap. But the point that I make to you is to know that wherever you are, you may want to check a restaurant and see if maybe some surprises that aren't on the menu. One more recipe before we call it a night, my friends. Because we need a main course. We're talking a lot about like vegetables and 1,000 squash recipes. There's your broccoli. There's your cauliflower. There's your pasta with lemon. But wait, a garlic lover's recipe because life's too short to worry about bad breath. If you've ever said the words too much garlic, don't talk to me ever again. That's how this article sets out. Beautiful looking picture, as you can expect, of chicken legs, that is both the drumstick and the thigh, so we're talking dark meat. It's in a beautiful gratin dish. And if it were up to me, this recipe would be called lots of garlic with roast chicken legs instead of the other way around. Let's see, how is this whole thing? Oh, the whole thing takes 10 minutes to prep, right? Because you got chicken legs, salt, sliced lemon, all the garlic, a few sprigs of thyme, a fresh chili if you have one, like a jalapeno or whatever, and an ungodly amount of olive oil, all meet up in one baking dish. But it needs some good, time in the oven to roast. You'll know it's ready when the meat is barely hanging on, everything is bubbling and crisp. That's like an hour or more. And there's a beauty to the chicken leg and the thigh connected, right? That's how they'll sell them. Chicken legs. It's the drumstick and the thigh attached. They'll sell them in packages of 2, 3, 4. And the beauty is it's hard to actually overcook it. Like it'll be falling off the bone, it'll be crisp, it'll be delicious. Let's see what the recipe says we need to do. The recipe says, I don't know what happened to me, 4 chicken legs. That's the thigh and the drumstick. You're looking at a couple, 2.5 pounds. Now, for me, that would feed 2 people, maybe normal people, that would be 4. You're going to need your kosher salt. And you have 4 chicken legs, mind you, and 4 heads of garlic that you're going to cut in half crosswise. All you need is 1 lemon, but it's thinly sliced into rounds. Get rid of the seeds. You need 1 red chili, like a Fresno, that's quartered lengthwise. Seeds in or out, depending on whether you want hot. You want hot, you leave the seeds in. You don't want hot, you just want flavor, get the seeds out. What are we going to do herbage-wise? 3 bay leaves or 5 sprigs of thyme. Take your choice. And then you got some freshly ground black pepper, half a cup of olive oil, that's a lot, and then country-style bread that's toasted that you're going to serve it with. And you understand that because when that thing comes out of the oven, all garlicky and bubbly and crispy skin and deliciousness, and it's going to be like a combination of chicken juice and lemon and olive oil in that pan, and you're going to want that bread. You know you're going to want that bread for the soppage. Right, so you take those ingredients. What you do, get your oven at 325, so they're going low and slow. Your chicken goes in a baking dish. Season it generously all over with salt. Add the garlic in. Like now you have these 4 heads of garlic cut in half. So there's 8 things of garlic, and you're going to put them, I think, like cut side down. Put in your lemon, put in your chili, put in your bay leaves, put in some pepper, pour in the oil, toss everything to coat. Turn the garlic heads cut side down. They're in contact with the baking dish. That'll help them get brown. Roast the chicken, rotating the pan once until the meat is almost falling off the bone, 75 to 90 minutes. Let the chicken cool in the pan in 10 minutes, then serve with bread. That's all you need. I have a book. It's called Short Order Dead. I have it. I mean, I wrote it. What am I talking about? And one of the recipes in there is chicken with 41 cloves of garlic. I know 41 seems odd, but that's because I think we've already heard of the 40-clove garlic chicken. But yeah, the thing about garlic over all that time, you roast it in the recipe that we were talking about much earlier in the day and mix it with ricotta, that was good. Or whether it shows up in a pan with chicken and lemon, it gets soft and it gets sweet and it gets wonderful. It's really one of the greatest things to cook with in the world. And so there you have it. We've moved into October. We've changed the menu somewhat. We talked a lot about roasting vegetables that are coming out of the ground, most notably the squash, certainly some cauliflower, then there's some broccoli. We threw in a little bit here at the end about some chicken with all the garlic you can eat. These are all deliciousness. These are all about deliciousness. Today is about deliciousness. Make tomorrow about deliciousness by making dinner. Need help? Feel free to reach out to me. I'm shortorderdead@gmail.com, or you can pick up a copy of my book on Amazon, Short Order Dead, One Guy's Guide to Making Food Fun and Hassle-Free. And my friends, I'll be back next Wednesday night, probably with a guest that you're going to want to hear. And there you go. That's episode 29 of All You Can Eat. I'll see you Wednesday night next at 8 p.m. And remember this, life is short, so never waste a meal.
I'm the Teflon Pan Man. I'm the Teflon Pan Man. Ain't nothing gonna stick on